Never felt that, come on, yeah. Never felt that, come on, yeah. When I never felt that, come on, yeah. You gotta get up.
Chapter 16, Section 2. Let's begin with just how messed up are things in 1856? They are so messed up that the Democrats declined to nominate President Franklin Pierce for a second term. I don't know of any other time in history that this took place. How did President Pierce respond to this? Well, it was reported that his response was, the Kansas-Nebraska Act divided the Democratic Party along the north and southern sectional lines. Same thing with the Whig Party, pretty much destroyed the Whig Party. So when we get to 1956, we have a know-nothing party. That's Millard Fillmore. Won't give up wanting to be president. The know-nothings, that is the anti-immigrant, racist, we don't like anybody but us party. Then James Buchanan is the Democratic Party. It's definitely split. And now we have a new party, John C. Fremont, who you might remember from the Mexican-American War, running as a candidate for the Republican Party. Post-election, the blue states are the Democrats, and that means the 15th president of the United States is James Buchanan. If Pierce's presidency was awful, Buchanan's presidency was worse than awful. Now, there was a lot of stuff going on outside of his control. This was not a good time to be a president, but he was probably the worst man for the job. Trivia: he was the only bachelor to ever occupy the White House. Now, most historians will tell you that's because he was our first gay president. William Rufus King was Franklin Pierce's vice president. The two men lived together for 13 years, from 1840 until King died in 1853. Andrew Jackson was not known as Mr. Sensitive. He referred to the two of them as Miss Nancy and Aunt Fancy. Miss Nancy was a 19th century gay slur, so it was worse than you thought it was. Let's take a look at the key events we've got to figure out. Dred Scott decision, Lincoln-Douglas debates, John Brown's raid, and finally Lincoln will get elected president. Let's jump right in with Dred Scott. Dred and his wife lived with his master in Illinois and Wisconsin for 4 years. He sued for his freedom on the grounds that when his master took him into places where slavery was illegal, that had made him a free man. The Supreme Court came back with, no, you're not a man. People of African descent could not be U.S. citizens. Congress can't forbid slavery in any federal territories. So even though the Missouri Compromise was defunct, it was now made unconstitutional. And the reaction, just like today, conspiracy theories. The Northern came up with the slave power conspiracy to spread slavery throughout the United States, even to the free states, which brings us to this guy. He will be thrust onto the stage, literally in this case, on the Lincoln-Douglas debates. He will be a Republican challenging Stephen Douglas, our Democrat incumbent for Senate seat in Illinois. I hope you remember that Douglas was our compromiser in the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which led to popular sovereignty, which led to bloody Kansas. Good for him. So this is going to pit the popular sovereignty philosophy versus the free soil philosophy. And if you remember, the free soilers felt, who were the real victims when we were dealing with slavery? The white farmers. The impact was Douglas wins the election, but becomes very unpopular in the South. Lincoln becomes a national figure, and then people start to listen to him when he says things like,
a house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other.
Now, it's too bad we're not together, because if we were, we would watch this video, which starts off with some real educational information, but very quickly turns into a Douglas Lincoln dance-off. See what you're missing? We don't have time for that nonsense, but what we do have time for is Abraham Lincoln reads mean tweets.
Saw the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Just shut up already. It's Illinois. It's not that big a deal.
John Brown's raid. Seize the federal arsenal. Arsenal is where you keep lots of weapons. Get them into the hands of slaves. Lead a rebellion. At the same time, not lead a rebellion. I had to read a whole bunch of his stuff in college, and he is just as crazy as he looks.
I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away but with blood.
So he was charged and tried with treason, not against the United States of America, but he was tried and found guilty and executed by the state of Virginia. Like Preston Brooks in the South, remember that was our beating, Brown became a very polarizing figure. He'll be vilified in the South. In the North, by radical abolitionists, they will make him a hero. So here's the situation where we're at. North, slave power conspiracy. South's trying to spread slavery everywhere, even above the Mason-Dixon line. The South, there are all sorts of crazy people like John Brown running around trying to incite slave rebellions. That is the end of this episode.